Senator Youssef.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable colleagues, of course, like many, I rise also to speak on this very important piece of legislation. I was struggling over the last number of days trying to figure out what do I say in regard to this debate. So in the end, I didn't read another statistics, data that's been published so many times before. I decided to tell my own story, how I got here and why. In 2017, in my previous life as president of the Canadian Labour Congress, the convention passed a resolution saying the CLC should conduct a campaign to get our country to adopt national pharmacare. So like in any process, after you pass a resolution, we went back to the organization headquarters and figure, well, that's not so simple. I'm not convinced we have a problem. And how am I going to know if we have a problem unless I go to talk to our members? So I embarked on a 30-city tour across the country. I went to large cities and small cities. I thought, of course, we in the labour movement are very good at representing our members, to bargain for them, to ensure they have proper coverage. So I'm certainly not going to hear from our members that they have a problem. What I heard shocked me. Because the stories they were telling was not whether or not they had coverage. As a matter of fact, if you read the collective agreement, they said, yes, we do have coverage. From a single mother who told me, saying, under my collective agreement, I am supposed to be able to access the medication, but before I can do so, I must make a deductible of $700. She said, if I had $700, I would buy the medication. And she said, how do I explain this to my child? I didn't have an answer. I know our union, in their best effort, didn't put the deductible in the collective agreement because they were stupid. It was part of the bargaining process to at least establish a floor to access benefit. Of course, it was a deterrent because the majority of members were not high-paying jobs, could never access the medication. I heard from individuals who had coverage on their job and were leaving to go to another job. And in that period between the 60 days or 90 days for them to finish their probation, they had no medication. So they figured long before they were leaving the job, how can they stretch the medication they had to cover for that period? Of course, by not taking the medication they were required to take in proper doses, they destroyed their health. Their health is now worse before. And at the end of the day, of course, they're saying, why is this happening? When I finished the 30-city tour, I went back to my office. In many occasions, I cried in the event we were having. Because I cannot believe for a country as rich as ours, this is how we treat so many of our citizens. Now, I say this to you because I'm speaking to you today as somebody from the age of 18 up to today. I've always had full access to medication anytime I needed because I had good collective agreements and I had coverage. For all these years, I have never had to take a medication for my health. I'm fortunate. But my good fortune should not be my guide as to what we do. Now, here we are, a country of 157 years old. And I said a long time ago, nation building is never easy. And that's what we're involved in here, my friends. Nation building for all its citizens. Those who are wealthy enough will never need to be covered by a plan, and those who are poor enough will never have to worry should they get sick, whether or not they can access their medication. I'm fully aware as I travel the country, the provinces and territory in this federation, it's not all the same. If you live in Quebec, they have different rules. Is it perfect? By no stretch of the imagination. If you live in British Columbia, it's different. provincial programs are all different across the country. But here's the sad reality. If you get sick and you go to a hospital in this country, they will give you every drug necessary to get you better until they kick your ass out the door. And then you're on your own, because you no longer have access to that medication unless you have coverage or have money or the wealth to go and purchase the medication. How is that possible? When you're sick, they will look after you, but the minute they kick you out the hospital door, you have no access to those medications at the end of the day. This is not right, my friends. And I know we're having a debate, so I want to start by thanking Social Committee for the work they've done. And for all the witnesses who came to testify, those who are in support of the bill and those who criticized the bill. This is part of what the democracy is about. But at the end of the day, I also want to thank Senator Pate for her diligent, hard work to sponsor this bill. I know, colleagues, we're not all going to be of the same mind today as we get to the end, as we vote on this bill. But I reflect on this in many ways. I had a good friend who had a heart attack in Windsor, so I went to visit him in a hospital. As he was lying in his hospital bed, he was told his company just declared bankrupt. He's 50-something years of age. Two things happened when he was told the company went bankrupt. His pension was not fully funded, and we didn't have super priority for pensions in bankruptcy. So he was not going to get the pension he was promised, and he was lying in a hospital bed with a heart attack. He was also told while he was lying in that bed, 30 days from the day when he was told the company went bankrupt, his coverage will cease for medication. He looked at me and he says, "What do I do? How would I provide for my family? How would I take care of myself when I get out of this hospital?" That good friend, I was honest. I told him, I don't know. I don't have the answer for you. Now, I was fortunate to be here. Thanks to my friends, Senator Plett and his colleagues, we did pass a bill, by the way, and we changed the law on bankruptcy. So if workers should ever go bankrupt, companies should ever go bankrupt, workers will get super priority in the line to make sure their pension will be fully funded in the future. But we didn't fix the other part of the problem. What about his medication? Because his medication came from his contractual agreement. When a company goes bankrupt, there is no contractual agreement. So I'm going to conclude my comments, colleagues. I watched Dr. Hoskins when he did his report, as he traveled the country with his team, and I thought they put together a very good report for our nation. Our provinces and our territory are trying in their best effort to figure out how to help their citizens. But the reality is we have a patchwork in this great nation of ours. And we need to recognize we could do better. If you live in New Zealand, you can buy Lipitor, a drug that we produce in this country, cheaper than you can purchase in Canada. How is it possible? I think we're on the process of trying to build a better system, using bulk purchases to buy some of the best medication we can. But as I conclude my remarks, I want to reflect on two important things. My mom of 100 years, this May, has never had a drug coverage. She was never rich enough, and she never worked in a job where she had an employer that could provide her with drug coverage. She turned 100. Next year, she'll be 101. But despite that, she's done all right. This is about how we make change. I hope the next 100 years, as my young 16-year-old daughter, who is about to become an adult soon, that she would not have to wait 100 years like her grandmother to ensure she's going to have drug coverage. I think this bill provides a foundation how we can build a better system working with the provinces and territory across the country, at the same time working with private employers in regard to their responsibility. There's much been said about private employers. Aren't they going to get rid of their coverage because this is going to come? I represent workers my whole life. Yes, some might try to do that, but as you know, the contractual agreement does not give an employer to take something away from workers unless the workers agree to it. So for all the hype we have heard, workers are going to lose their coverage, the labor movement has been in the forefront arguing and supporting the expansion and for this bill to come into place. And in provinces where they're able to articulate and support, the government has said you need to expand your coverage. I know we can do better, colleagues, but I think we need to reflect that just because you have a privilege, it doesn't mean you don't think about your fellow citizens who don't have that privilege. I hope the privilege that I've had in my life become a right for every citizen in this country. And I think